Call to order for a Watertown City Council meeting for January 21st of 2025. Please rise while Watertown Fire Rescue Chaplain Hank Rosso leads us in prayer.
Thank you for joining me in prayer. Our good God in heaven, as we come to you this evening, we thank you for watching over us and this great land of ours. We ask, O God, your continued blessings during this time of transition at our nation's capital. And we pray together, God, and proclaim, God bless America. We also thank you for your hand over this great state of South Dakota and in this fine community of Watertown. I ask in Jesus' name, through a spirit of unity today and common love for our community, that you would have your way, give wisdom and insight. And Lord, help us, as you say in your word, to consider others as more important than ourselves. Watch over our police and fire, first responders, and employees of the city as they're working in this brutal weather. Keep them safe. Keep your hand on them, God, and watch over their families. We ask all these things with hearts full of thanksgiving. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Interim City Manager, please call the roll.
Okay. Tupper.
Here.
Bueller. Here. Danforth.
Here.
Pauline.
Here.
Jurens.
Here.
Peters.
Here.
Chuddy.
Here.
Thank you.
A quorum is established. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda with one modification. We will be removing item 9C. We'll be removing 9C from the agenda. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Motion made by Councilman Tupper. Second. Seconded by Councilman, was it Shuddy? Yeah. Okay, we'll go Shuddy. All right. Motion is to approve the agenda with that modification. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We are on to open forum. If there's anyone here who would like to address the council on something that is not on today's agenda, now is your time to do so. Please come forward, and even though we know you, our good friend, former City Councilman Rademski, but please introduce yourself and who you're representing if it's someone other than yourself.
Jason Rademski, I live at 13.
Oh, the microphone went out.
Jason Rademski, I live at 1316 North Maple in Watertown. And I come before the council tonight. For the last several months, I have tried to find an answer as to what it would take to take out a petition to go back to a strong mayor form of government versus the current form of government that we have. I've stopped at City Hall, sent several emails out, two of which I never got a response on. And as the council is here to the citizens of Watertown, I'm wondering, what do I need to do to take out this petition to put this to a vote of the people? Because I really don't think that, I think before we move too much further down the road, we need to find out if this is the form of government the people want. So I'm asking for your help tonight as to what I need to do to take a petition out to put this back on the ballot to a vote of the people.
Mr. Rademski, we don't allow back and forth, but during open forum. But I do believe we could answer that question if you're done. If you're done testifying.
Yes.
City Attorney Carrico, do you have an answer? I mean, but if you want time to prepare the answer, we could get back to it at the end of the meeting as well.
I can do both, but I can say that I am one of the responses to Mr. Rademski previously when he asked, which is to point him out to the sections of the Home Rule Charter and state statute, which talk about how to bring that, and then also how long we had to wait, given how the charter was adopted and how it can be revised with regard to the city manager. So that was done, and I can certainly do that again.
Now, is it true that when Watertown adopted this form of government by the vote, that there could be no revision until 2027? Or is that not quite true?
There can be certain revisions to the charter. It really was on, the limitation was really on the city manager form of government itself. So, but the remainder of the charter, there are certain sections of the charter that can be changed whether it be by the people or by council presenting something. So yes.
But in regards to changing back to the, let's say, strong mayor form of government, that cannot
Correct.
happen
Right, we need to
until
wait.
2027.
Correct.
Okay.
But I can double check that,
Okay.
just to make sure.
We'll get some, Attorney Carrico can get some more answers for you, but that was in the 2019 vote when that was taken to the community.
And the reason I ask is because I know Sturgis went back to that also. They had a city manager and went back to a strong mayor form of government. So that's why I thought I would present it again, because that's what they, decided, and it was ruled on by the Supreme Court that a vote must take place so long after that a petition had been taken out. So, also one other thing I would like to announce, that I'm going to be a candidate in the coming election for the at-large position. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rudemski. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on something? Come on forward. And again, even though we know you, Mr. Mormon, please introduce yourself for the public.
Brent Mormon. I live at 1001 16th Avenue Northeast here in Watertown. Mayor Horleen, councilmen, and citizens of Watertown, it is with great excitement that I come before you tonight to announce my candidacy for the Ward A council seat. My name is Brent Mormon. I graduated from Watertown Senior High in 1995 and Lake Area Technical College in 1998. I have lived the large majority of my life right here in Watertown, currently residing in Northridge, and I'm asking Ward A residents for their vote on June 17th. If elected councilmen, I can assure Ward A that they will have no stronger voice for their concerns than what they will find in myself. I will promise to vote according to how my constituents request that I vote on issues. I will hold the new city manager to an extremely high standard of professionalism, that they maintain a strong sense of urgency, and I expect their behavior and conduct with the public to be impeccable. I also want to speak directly to the city employees. Having been a city employee myself under the former city manager and assistant city manager, I fully understand what you went through and your concerns for the future leadership. I will say this to you, that if I am elected, you will find in me an ally like you have never had before on the council. I will go to the nth degree to improve your quality of work life. Nothing will be swept under the rug, and I will work with the rest of the council to ensure that we do not turn a blind eye to anything. Additionally, I can assure you that I will have no problem letting the people of Watertown know what is going on. To Ward A residents in Watertown, as a councilman, you can rest assured that I will respond back very quickly to your requests and concerns and see them through to completion. I am more than willing to assist you and developers navigate through issues when City Hall leadership is causing roadblocks. I will also be willing to publicly say where the problem lies. Once again, my name is Brent Mormon, and I am running for the Ward A council seat that is currently held by Mike Danforth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council in open forum? I'll close open forum and we'll go to item 9A. Wait, is that 9C? Did I say remove 9A or 9C? 9C, okay,
yep.
thank you. It's been a long day already. All right. Item 9A is an approval of the 2025 to 2027 IAFF Collective Bargaining Agreement. We'll go to our interim city manager, Bob Zine, for more information.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yes, before the council is the last of our union contracts that are up for approval. Last meeting, we took care of AFSCME and also the police union. This one is very straightforward. This one also had the 2% COLA with a one step, which is 2%, so all in a 4% pay increase. And there was a small adjustment made to some of the assignment pay that we offer the firefighters. But other than that, everything else was kind of pretty much standard as the rest of the agreements. If there's specific questions, HR Director Nichols can help, and Chief Rowland is here as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Nichols, would you like to add anything?
No, not at this time. I think that was a good summary. I can talk a little bit about the assignment pay for our senior firefighters, and the change there was made to have a senior fire apparatus officer 1, who is the lead engine officer at Fire Station 1, and senior firefighter apparatus operator 2 is the lead operator at Fire Station 2. And then operator 3 is a fill-in for those positions. So about 50 to 60% of the time, they're acting up into other roles. So this affords them the ability to learn how to lead and practice leading a crew while getting some compensation for that.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agreement. Motion made by Councilman Jurens, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Let's open it up for conversation. Councilman Tupper?
So Director Nichols, when you say a lead in each one, are you talking a lead in each one per shift?
Yes, per
Okay.
shift. There
Yeah,
will
I
be
just-
one on shift A, B, and C.
So-
An apparatus officer 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or conversation? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the agreement. All those in favor will say aye. Opposed, nay. Officer Bob Zine?
Okay. Tupper?
Aye.
Bueller? Danforth?
Aye.
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Shetty?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Item 9B is an approval of a work order with South Dakota Department of Transportation for consultant services of the Lake Compesca Bike Trail Segment 2 project with Infrastructure Design Group in the amount of $129,000 roughly. Interim City Manager Bob Zine, please tell us more.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yes, in front of the council is the work order with the DOT. This agreement with the DOT for Lake Compesca Bike Trail Segment 2 was actually approved by the council in May 20th, 2024, which identified the area of the bike trail as well as set aside the funding, the 80% with the state and 20% with the city. What this work order does is it designates that we will be using IDG for the design. The next step after this work order is approved, the South Dakota DOT will start to work with IDG, and we will then get the bid prepared to bid out at the end of 2025 with construction to start in 2026. So if there's any further questions, I can answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the work order. Motion made by Councilman Bueller.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Jurens. Open it up for questions and conversation. Councilman Danforth.
Does this complete the bike trail then around the lake, or is there still another step here? Mount Rushmore was built in this
Yeah,
thing.
I would like to say that I know that exact answer, but I don't. I can look into it. I think this was one of our last segments, though. I do. The complete loop.
So it's
Yep,
at least that part around the lake.
yep.
Any further questions or conversation? Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure who to address this question to, but what is the scope of work for these consulting folks?
With the IDG. So essentially, the state is kind of the one who works to establish them, and then it'll be basically just like any other engineer. So this is just us doing the whole design and then the bid specs essentially for the project. Yep.
Any further comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the work order. If you're in favor of that, say aye. If you're against it, say nay. Officer Bob Zine.
Okay. Tupper?
Aye.
Bueller? Danforth?
Aye.
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Shetty?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Item 10A is a first reading of an ordinance of the City of Watertown, South Dakota, increasing maximum fine from $200 to $500 in the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown. For this, we will go to our City Attorney, Carrico.
Thank you, Mayor. This is something that has kind of been on the to-do list. Some of the housekeeping items that have happened throughout '24, which was to increase the maximum fine. So we're not saying that the fines will be $500. This would be to increase the maximum. And this is based upon both just increased costs over time. I did look and did some preliminary research on our ordinances, and it looks like for most of the fines, they date back to the late 90s. A couple were done in 2004, 2006. The state of South Dakota increased their maximum fine for a Class 2 misdemeanor, which is, the lowest, back in 2006, and at that time, we did not. However, much time has passed, and so I would recommend that, in consultation with the department heads, I would have council consider increasing the maximum fine. Not only is it increased cost to us when we have to go to court, it's staff time, my time, city's time, preparing things, but also we get into situations where depending on the violation, it could be egregious. We've had fire department out on occasion for certain violations. It can also be that we have repeat offenders. So obviously, they're a little blasé about the offense and tend to just plead guilty. My ticket's only going to be $100. It'd be nice to be able to request from the court to increase that in order to hopefully get compliance with our city ordinances. So thank you. Any other questions, I can answer them.
Thank you. This is the first reading, so we're just opening questions and comments. Does anyone have anything? All right. We'll move on to item 11A, a second reading of an ordinance zoning text amendments to the summary of district regulations, associated zoning districts, overlay districts, modular homes provisions, manufactured home provisions, daycare homes, and definitions of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown. Community Development Manager Hanton is here to tell us more.
Thank you, Mayor. So as stated, this is the second reading. We had the first reading previously where these next 5 ordinances are all intertwined in that fashion of amendments to Title 21. And they're just broken down individually in their groups. This one primarily, as stated, there's a lot of actual chapters included with this specific ordinance. But I just broke down the main points of what this one is covering because it has the summary of the zoning district regulations with the chart, and then it also has the various uses for each of the zoning districts and then the definitions. And so a lot of the changes to any of the existing zoning districts are just because it was a matter of changing how we defined that use, which a lot of it was like the dwelling types. So to make that more specific, we did have this presented I had a presentation at the Planning Commission and brought that forward to them ahead of action, as obviously there are a lot of items here for review and consideration. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions.
Thank you. I am opening up a public hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item before we bring it up by council? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Can I get a motion to approve the amendment or the ordinance amendments? Motion made by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Bueller. So open it up for questions. Councilman Danforth?
Yeah, I don't know if this pertains here or not, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it may. Has there been, Ms. Hanton, has there been any consideration of changing the definition or enforcing differently? I'm not really sure what it is. The definition between a manufactured home and an RV, that issue has come up on Stony Point out there. You're aware of that. Mm-hmm. And I believe most people would look at that and say, well, that's just a little mini manufactured home. And from some other classification, it's called an RV. I think Mr. Jurgen has been contacted about that as well. So has there been any discussion on making any kind of change, necessary change to that type of structure in our community?
So yeah, with that scenario, that was how they were licensed or registered as RVs. We didn't in this amendment before us. However, we did make sure to still include the minimum size for a manufactured home or modular home at that, actually. So we were not getting tiny homes. So the only place that these types of structures or RVs could be placed are within campgrounds. And then there are the stipulations in there too of how often they have to be moved and whatnot. So that they have to be portable. But otherwise, a home like that could not be placed anywhere else today in ordinance.
Any follow-up, Councilman?
Well, I do, and I'm asking this only because I've had a number of communications from the public on this. I believe from a association standpoint that whatever this RV association, they classify these as recreational vehicles. What was our intent? And I know this is really not fair to you, but I'm asking anyway. What was our intent in having specific language about manufactured homes, et cetera, here, and then these come in and the only difference is apparently they can be licensed versus, let's call it what it is. It's a manufactured home that apparently has a license plate on it or a sticker or something. What was our intent in that type of structure, whether it's licensed or not? Do we have any background with that?
So as far as the city's intent, I would say it wasn't on the radar of how they go about licensing a certain vehicle. So it kind of would be like if somebody brought their ice shack to a campground, which they do. So it's kind of in line with that. The manufactured home section, though, in this ordinance is they can only be placed in R4, the manufactured homes districts. And then the amendments that were done to the manufactured home section here in this amendment before you was actually just to create more straightforward administration, because otherwise we had a lot of different variations of types, and some of them are obsolete anymore. That just hasn't been updated, the ordinance itself. So we did not get into any specifics as far as the licensing, though. But really, manufactured homes can only be in R4 zoning districts.
So let me ask a question. So let's say I buy one of these little things and I look at our parking requirements that we have, and we can have them out in front of our garages, says where we can have them, that kind of. I could put one of these things down there and sit it on my driveway from April till October and have it just sit there. It's an RV, which like is any other camper. Could I do that? And if I can't, why can't I if it's an RV?
So you could, you just can't have it in the driveway. It has to be beside the garage.
Whatever the location is, I could do that.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Councilman Tupper.
You just can't live in it. It can't be an accessory dwelling unit.
Part of my point, what I was just going to make, I want to touch base a little bit on the home care providers. That was quite interesting at the Plan Commission Board of Adjustments. It brought a lot of people to the table, a lot of concern. Ms. Hanton's staff is assured, basically, it's streamlining their process. One other thing I'd like to see out of it, and this is after a conversation with our 911 director, Mr. Van Duzen, very few of these home daycares are registered. When they get a 911 call, it would be nice to figure out a way to get them to register. When there's a 911 call that goes to that, whether it's a police officer or fire department personnel, if they know they're going to a home with 12 kids in it, they're going to, not saying they don't handle it with the way it should be, but I mean, they're going to handle it a little bit different, knowing that there's 12 kids there, so I don't know if there's something down the road we can ask them to register. I know that would be a for public safety wise, that would be a great asset, so.
Yeah, yes, I agree. And that's another perk of this streamlined process is that there are no fees associated with it if they meet all the requirements. And that's something too that, through this, even though on the front end, what was actually being proposed, I think was a little misinterpreted. And and I think that if anything, if there's the daycare providers that are kind of following to see where this ordinance ends up, that is a good public outreach to just say about, there are those positives to it, and then there's not a fee associated with it, as long as they don't need to come for a conditional use if they don't meet the requirements.
criteria,
Three of
yep.
them. Yep.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Brandy, a quick question for you in regards to you got the PUD up there. I know we've sort of had this discussion. What was the reasoning for dropping the acreage on the PUDs from 5 to 3?
The idea is that for certain properties that would be ideal for a PUD because they're in developed areas that should be that will need specific zoning. It's for areas that are abutting like a collector route, but are in a residential district, so that it allows them to have the ability to not have to just go with a conventional zoning. So, for example, Eastwoods, that development, we had to do that inclusion of the city property to get them to 5 acres so that they could specifically design that property. And so it's really just for scenarios like that. Obviously, still 3 acres within city proper. It's a decent enough piece of property where the idea of having that minimum restriction, or the minimum square footage though, is just so then somebody that has 9,000 square feet can't be like, I'm going to rezone to a PUD. So, but then to try to find just a happy medium.
Do you know why we had it at 5 to begin with? That's
No.
way before your time, probably.
No, I'm not sure. I think it's just for that reason of that you're not just getting any piece of property utilizing a PUD, that it has decent size to it. But it's just been, and it's not just for that one development particularly. There's been other pieces of property that have been undeveloped that run into that issue.
Mayor, follow up if I might. Yep. Another question I have is, are we, through this ordinance, the way I read it, and I could be wrong, are we reducing the number of square feet necessary for a R1 lot?
No,
We're not,
not touching R1.
or R2?
R2 really isn't changing, other than we're allowing triplexes and fourplexes in the R2 because it's that medium density development by permitted use rather than by conditional use. And then, but it follows the same density really, that, and actually kind of creates a better guidance for keeping the density consistent. Because otherwise, if somebody has today they need a 10,000 square foot lot, if they came to the Board of Adjustment and asked for a fourplex on that lot, they could potentially be granted it, where this ordinance has it laid out for what you need minimally for a fourplex in these certain districts. So like this, whoa.
You do.
You would need 13,500 square feet at a minimum. Instead, I don't know how to get this off again. Oh, there were 3 clicks. Instead of 10,000 previously. So it just allowing, because it's kind of that missing middle or just that extra hoop of this is still considered medium density in the R2.
Okay, I just got to tell you, I had a tough time deciphering the way this was put together. You know, what was crossed out, what's green, what's, not shaded anymore. So I just had a tough time. But I just want to clarify some of those things.
It was very complex. And this chart, this was a nightmare. But we also do have the clean version too, but it's like further down, but the track changes then are nice to at least, and the reason why everything's green is because otherwise it was a mess. You couldn't even see it, the track changes. So I had to recreate the chart. So,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you. Thanks for all your hard work.
thank you.
Councilman Jerns.
Brandy, thank you for being here. It's been a long day already. Was there any contemplation or any discussion in regard to clarifying the tiny home situation that we have a lot of calls on and will continue to get them because they haven't been moved after 180 days? Is there anything that got included in there in regards to those two things?
No, we didn't. However, it should still fall under, what those fall under today is the campground ordinance. So then we do have those design standards within that specific ordinance. So, I mean, we could try to add something specific to those. I think it's just difficult though of how they're registered of what, if they can move them and they're mobile, whatever, and they're licensed as an RV, if that's allowable, how to differentiate between if somebody has their ice shack or, I don't know. But those are things that we can look into if that's, been problematic.
So the question is, how the hell did the city, this is the one I get, how the hell did the city ever let those things in there? That's the question we're dealing with.
Yeah. And that, it's a camp, it has a conditional use to be a campground. And so then how they're licensed is how that's where there was that loophole because, we didn't anticipate it. And then we just have the regulations for what a campground requires. And then that's that it has to be moved every 180 days. Every 6 months. So it should be regulated. And that's all of it's by complaint basis.
Okay, so the enforcement is complaint basis on the 180 days? Okay. Citizen, anybody
Yeah.
can file that complaint with your office?
Yeah, but it can come through community development or code enforcement, which is through the police department.
Okay, Terry Ingles.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think too, just on the fly of, with our different softwares of, we're trying to incorporate with OpenGov and whatnot for tracking purposes, because it was by conditional use, but then it makes it tough because you don't know when they're supposed to keep record. So if it gets questioned, that's the time that we would approach them and have to see those records. But yeah, there could be improvement on that end.
I know the neighbors know when they were put in there. And they really do look like modular mobile homes, the way they're set with skirting and, so, all right. Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to speak before Councilman Tupper speaks a second time? Councilman Tupper.
Can you tell me what the definition of moved is? Do they got to roll them ahead a foot? They got to totally move them off that lot, move them into another lot? It's no different than a car on the street. They move them. I see where everybody's coming from, but it's a hard enforceable thing to what is the definition of move? Does it have to be moved off that lot onto another lot? So,
I think typically with campgrounds that it's like you don't see that where even if somebody has a seasonal spot, like it's not an issue, the 6 months deal, because then like they'll go and put them, park them away for the season and whatnot. But I know that we've contemplated that before. I'm wondering if we added any language to the campground ordinance itself, because I do believe that came up.
okay. That was my question. I think that's something that needs to be clarified because we could say they got to be moved every 180 days, but, does that move it? Somebody push it ahead an inch or? Thank you.
Manager Hanton, I guess open-ended question for the council too. I'm just curious as going back to the daycare issue because that's really where this one originally came to public attention over a month ago. I was just wondering after that initial uproar and then things were explained that it wasn't really changing anything, it seemed to die down quite a bit. I know I haven't gotten any correspondence from any concerned citizen. Have you, Manager Hanton, or anyone on the council? Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything because that was a big thing right up front and a big thing for the community. Councilman Tupper?
Yeah, and I also did take Manager Hanton to the radio station with me I think it was the following day, if I remember right, or a couple days after that to kind of explain it to the public, which I think it was a lot of misconception that people were going to have to start building fences and do this and do that, and they'd already been in business for 12 years, and this was just a housekeeping and a streamlining the position on it. So if they meet if they meet all the ordinances, they no longer have to go in front of the Board of Adjustments. The staff can administer that. So.
Yep.
Any further comments?
If I can just add too, I looked at the campsite ordinance that we have today, or campground, and it actually states that campsites shall only be occupied by any one individual for temporary seasonal stays, and no individual's occupancy at a campground shall exceed 180 days in any one calendar year. So that's more so saying when they're occupying it. So it can't be like somebody's primary residence. But if they keep their camper there and they winter-proof it there, they technically can. But it's just being occupied for how we have it in ordinance today, not how it's being amended.
So no requirements to moving it.
The 180 days of moving, I'm recalling, is for floodplain. If you're in a floodway, you can park things, but not for more than 180 days.
Okay. Any further comments or questions, council? The motion is to approve the zoning text amendments. All those in favor will say aye. Opposed, nay. Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Tupper?
Yeah.
Bueller? Danforth?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Shetty?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. On to item 11B, a second reading of an ordinance zoning text amendments to Chapter 21.80, signs and outdoor advertising of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown. Manager Hanton, back to you.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So this, again, is, a lot of these changes were for clarifying. Obviously, during the first reading, I talked about how we were going to keep the language of if somebody wanted to convert an off-premise or on-premise sign, that it would have to go to the Board of Adjustment. Previously, we had struck that just because it doesn't happen very often, but then there was, after the Planning Commission presentation, a interested party reached out and just had concerns, brought that to our attention, which we appreciate because, obviously, usually when we do sign code ordinance amendments, we have had a task force involved with that. These we felt were not as technical, but more so just issues that we've had with administering, so, or just clarifying. So that is why these are ahead of us without any private input as far as stakeholders go. So with that, I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you. I'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Can I get a motion to approve the amendments?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Shetty. Questions or comments? Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Manager Hanton, you and I have had a discussion. We talked about some of these issues earlier today. You know, I was a part of the boards, the commissions that remodeled the sign ordinance. I remember the first one we remodeled, it was from, the old language said that you could use new materials known as plastic. So that's how old that ordinance was. But I think it was around 2017, 18, we revised this. And we had a number of folks that were represented from the community, different cross-section people that were in the sign business, citizens, planning commission folks, as well as city council folks. So a lot of those decisions were made, and I see what you're doing here is and I'm not saying they're wrong, but it bothers me a little bit that we can have somebody call and complain a little bit maybe, and then staff can make this adjustment. After maybe a lot of time was put into, a lot of effort and thought was put into some of these changes that we made. One in particular that I have an issue with is the feather signs. I recall those meetings, and there was an issue. The main issue was 212, all the noise, all the signage noise on 212. And we had all the car dealers, and they got those feather signs, and a lot of them, they'd get, ripped up and they'd get faded. There were just too many, and it was pretty unanimous as far as what I can remember that we felt we needed to get rid of those. And I know you've got 100-foot spacing on here. I don't know how many people are going to abide by that, but certainly we felt it was a strong issue. We thought we should get rid of them. So unless you've had a lot of folks call up that were upset because they couldn't get a feather sign out, then I would ask that we strike that one. Just my opinion. The rest of the council may have a different idea. Thank you.
Councilman Bueller, could you, just for the sake, if you wanted to make that motion, or Manager Hanton, where specifically in this would that be?
Yep. It's under prohibited signs. Okay, so under 218014, that it would be, we would strike number 9, where it's feather flags are allowed 1 per 100 linear feet of frontage, not to exceed 6 per property.
Just strike it all together in just 9?
And then under 218015, 6, we would keep, let's see, flags, both feather type and traditional, that display an advertising message except one traditional flag bearing. Yeah. So then we would keep number 6 on 218015.
You would, okay, so you would strike 14.9.
Yep.
Keep 15.6.
Yep.
Okay, just for clarification, no motion has been made, but I wanted to clarify that right now. Councilman Bueller, are you?
No,
would
just
you
one
like
more,
to-
just one
Yep.
more comment. No, I would ask that we be a little cautious about some of these things that staff just takes it upon themselves to make changes to. I would hope that we would, if necessary, if we have to convene some folks to look at these. I know it's not a lot of them, and at some point it's going to happen again. Somebody's going to come out and want a bunch of major changes to signage, but just the overall idea that staff can just, throw those changes out. I understand we have to vote on it, but that's just a thought I have. Thanks.
Councilman Danforth?
Yeah. Unfortunately, at one point, I was on that committee as well, but I think early on when we were trying to figure out what plastic was. But couple questions on that. I do recall, where this became an issue, and it has in some other issues also, but specific to these feather signs, is, if one feather sign is good, 2 is really good, and then 50's got to be awesome, and 100, because that's what happened. It's like all of a sudden, every so many feet, there's all these signs. And part of the problem was where they were located on the property. They were always out by the road. So they weren't far from the road. And now you've got, like I said, 1's great, 2's awesome, 50's better. It just got to be without some controls in there, it was ridiculous. So I understand how we got to saying, well, scrap them. I don't recall if we talked about the use of these in regards to where on the property, right? What if I got my car dealership and it's, here's the road here and it's 100 feet back and I've got them sticking out on the side of my building? I mean, Menards has 6, 7, 8 green flags on top of their building. Do they have to remove them? I don't know if they do or not. They aren't hurting anybody. So I think there's a place for them. I just think that we got to decide. I think limiting them is okay, Mr. Bueller. I do think that's okay. But I think where they're at on the property is as important as anything. Because where these end up most of the time is not far from the curb. It seems like. So
Right.
that's, I'm okay with what you've got on here, but whatever the requirements are, 1 per 100 feet, linear foot of frontage, but they're all out by the curb, I don't like it. And I agree with Mr. Bueller. If they're back where they aren't intrusive to, well, let's call this less intrusive, then I don't have a problem with them. There's a place for them. So, just thoughts.
If I could, so there aren't specific placement requirements because they're just listed under exempt signs. And then typically, so they can't be in a clear view triangle, but then there's not necessarily a setback. So they could be on the edge of their property. However, they can't be in the boulevard. So that would be something, and really it's when they have the advertising message. So like Menards, they are, I don't know even, are they just like their colors? So.
I believe so.
And
They still have a purpose.
yeah, eye-catching and yeah. So the idea or just like what staff has heard or just the questions that have come about is just because when somebody is having a specific sale or whatever, that they can easily obtain a feather flag where it's a way that they can, switch things out or catch attention, whatever. Personally, it's just something for council to contemplate if we care or not. And I remember that discussion too, and that is where we landed with it because they can get gaudy. People can get them they're less expensive. They don't need a permit, so then we're not reviewing where they're placed. We do get enough calls where Terry Ingalls has to go and tell somebody to take their feather flags down because they've littered the boulevard with them and somebody sees it who has, just everyone keeps each other honest. So opening it up to say 1 per 100 linear feet, that might end up opening a can of worms as well. So unless we can, but that's where it's a council decision of, do we want to allow them or not? And if, we haven't for the last 6 years, probably. So if we want to stay with that, staff is good.
Councilman Beeler.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I want to point out one thing. When we talk about flags, like Mike had mentioned earlier, at Menards, that's a whole separate category. Those were dealt with. They were a whole different signage category, was for flags. Feather signs, what we're talking about here, that if we allow this, I think we're going to see them all over again. 212 is already so many signs. It's so cluttered up already that we're just going to add to the problem. And that was the main gist of why we took, and we'd see them tipped over, they'd get ratty, it just was, it looked really bad, in my opinion. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Councilman Tupper?
Well, I'm going to go back to an old profession I was in before I got into the car business. And I was in the soft drink business. And I remember back in those days that everybody, and this is before they put in regulations, and we weren't smart enough to regulate ourselves, that, any piece of property we could get out there at a convenience store or a grocery store, we put a sign on it. So, the town looked pretty terrible. We didn't self-police ourselves, and at some point they came up with an ordinance where it was no longer allowed, which the city looks a lot better. I'm going to go back to just before the election. I was in Sioux Falls, and guess what? We got way better ordinances than they do, because about every 30 feet there was a campaign sign, and they were all over boulevards, and there was every size sign you could think of. My old pal Arch Beal, he spent a lot of money on 4 or 8 signs, put it that way, because they were scattered all over Lincoln County and Minnehaha County. But I don't ever want to get back to that. The feather flags, I'm kind of with Bruce. I don't know. I just think we're going to allow that to get back into that position where we were in the past. I think our code enforcement officers got better things to do than chase after feather flags. So.
Any further comments? Councilman Jurgens?
Well, as a business person, they are very effective. And they do have, if I'm opening up, and earlier today we talked about opening up a taco stand, and there isn't anything better to attract somebody to your taco stand than one of those. It doesn't have to be multiple, it doesn't have to be ragged, but Terry's getting the calls right now because a lot of places are doing it. I can see why. It's a really, really good way. It's an affordable way to show that your business front is there. So I'm really on the fence right now with this, because I don't want the craziness that you guys describe. But I see 1 every 100 feet. It sounds like Terry's got a job enforcing it either way we go right now. I would have to say that I'm going to side with the business people on this. One time I asked, I'm not going to say name, I'm not going to say Golden Arches, but I said, what's your most effective form of advertising? And he goes, bar none, that little bitty sign right on the road. And he spent millions on advertising over the years, and he's been in tons of seminars explaining what's good and what's not, and that's the right sign to have if you're trying to succeed in business. And I'm here to help the business person out, because our citizens and our residents continue to want to have more options for restaurants and retail in this town.
Mayor, if I might.
Councilman Bueller?
Okay, thank you. Just, I thought I should mention, one of the key points, one of the challenges we had when we reconvened that sign committee was to reduce sign clutter. That was a huge part of what we were doing. And, I think, if it might help a taco stand, I guess, could very well be. And again, they're not always little. These things can be 10 feet tall. So maybe that little guy that flops around, I don't, maybe we need more of those, because that was actually something we did discuss. You know what I mean? But, no, so.
Got your attention, didn't I?
Yeah, I'm like, who the hell? No. Anyway, so that was the basis of one of the reasons that we had that committee put together. That was a big objective for us, was to try to reduce sign clutter. And yeah, we can. Because of one taco stand, we could have one, but then you're going to end up with 500 of them. And I promise you, they'll just pile them in all over the place. So, thanks.
Councilman Shetty?
So, back in 1948, when Councilman Bueller was learning about plastic on the sign committee, I'm curious though, was there a limit? I'm just curious for, was there a limit on the signs back then? Or is this something new, putting the 100 feet parameter in there? Would that help remove some clutter? I guess I'm just curious if there's a difference from this versus the way it was before.
Thank you. I'll respond to that, Councilman Shetty. I just want folks to know, I wasn't born yet when that, I'm just saying the first time I was on that committee, and we spent weeks, because we had to redefine everything, all months, months. In fact, more than a year probably. We did the same thing on the second one. But it had been a long, long time, and that's the reason we needed to do that. But the second time, we looked at it again, one of the reasons that we did that was to reduce clutter in the community. There are so many complaints about how bad 212 looked. They used to call it the tragic mile, So anyway, that's just a little history for you there, young fella.
Well, thank you for that. So follow up on that, Mayor, if you could. So then, I guess I'm assuming that this has the potential to reduce some clutter if we're doing the 100-foot mark. Would it potentially kind of a trial by error to see, as far as the business side of things? I'm listening. In this debate, I've been more listening than anything, just to kind of find out what worked, because sometimes there's wisdom in what we've been through, the shoes you've walked in and what you've seen and experienced. So I absolutely appreciate the input. That's why I'm just, my vote would be on, if we were to go to a vote on, right now we're just voting to approve it all, but to consider not doing it would be if indeed it would reduce the clutter, and we can try it again. It's another round, but that's just kind of where I'm at currently.
And just to be clear for council, the only proposal that is brought forward is the one that was in the original package. There was talk of changing it, but as of now, what you would be passing is allowing feather flags back again. Clarification question?
Yeah, clarification.
Councilman Peters.
Would it be permanent or temporary for these feather flags? If we're allowing this?
They're exempt, so they don't have a sign permit. So there wouldn't be regulation in that respect. But if so they could take them out daily, or they could leave them up.
Okay, follow up. So on a temporary permit, and I'm not extremely familiar with how this works, but how long is a temporary permit for, like a sign permit?
I believe we have it where they can be up for 15 days, and you can get 4 of them a year. And then you do have to get a permit.
So maybe this is rhetorical at this point, but would it make more sense to put the feathered flags under the temporary category? Because I see them when something opens, right? It's like now open or, whatever. That way we're kind of finding the better of both worlds here. We're not getting rid of them, but we can use them for temporary use.
And they're allowed, so like for a grand opening, then they can do a banner or something. But that is a good point. If you do just want them to be, and they definitely could be regulated as temporary signs.
To me, that makes sense because they're a temporary structure. They're, you stick them in the ground, they blow away in the wind, they flop all over the place. They're not a permanent structure. So it wouldn't make sense for us to act like they are. Let's give business owners the ability to, Councilman Juren's point, utilize them, but not into perpetuity. And there's limits to how many times they can use them. That sure seems reasonable to me. So is there a way we can make that motion into this?
Yeah, I believe we could.
Mayor, if I may.
I would almost recommend, if we're going down feather flags, I'm just saying, after all the conversation tonight, I would hate to make a motion tonight to change it when there's been work to put into it. I would prefer just pushing it back a council meeting, because there's nothing so pressing that we absolutely have to pass this right now. I would prefer having some of these questions brought forward to Manager Hanton. She can look it over, especially if it's just feather flags that we're talking about, because that would be my desire. Council. Councilman Peters, you still have the floor.
Yeah, and I guess I'm, you know, like Lynn, I'm a little bit conflicted on this just from the standpoint of I don't want clutter, so to speak, but I also don't want to tell business owners if they've made an investment in our community and they want to brag about now open, that we say, nope, you can't use the flags or the guy that dances or whatever, whatever that is. I think we should allow it. I think we should just make sure it's not up year round. And it shouldn't be something that we're loose on, but rather open the opportunity. And in other communities that we've worked in, if we've got a lot for sale or if we've got a development project, we put up, you've probably seen them, they're wood structures or platforms, you put a sign on it, whatever, those are temporary. We get a temporary sign permit to put them on the site that says, you know, now developing whatever, or a map of the site, and we have to get a temporary permit for that. I would liken that very similar to what we're talking about here, where we have a dedicated amount of time, and sometimes we need an exception for that. You know, if it's a large project and the temporary permit's only valid for 30 days, maybe we ask for 6 months because you can't build a soybean plant in 30 days. That to me seems like it's more reasonable than just striking it out completely.
Councilman Tupper, I'm sorry, I allowed Councilman Peters to skip the line.
Yep. So, can I ask Chief Toomey to come up here for a second?
Chief?
We talk about ordinances and Chief, just a quick minute, because I'm, nothing wrong with ordinances. But if we're going to put ordinances that aren't enforceable, then we're just wasting your time and ours. And can I get your take on that?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the conversation. I was just over there on pins and needles while you guys are talking about this, because it is an enforcement nightmare, I'd have to say, for lack of better terms. Terry is constantly going out for these feather flags. So whatever decision you make, just keep that in mind, that we will be enforcing them, and they have to be consistent across the board. So if there's a distance, how are you going to measure that? I mean, so we're going to be chasing our tails because, like Brandy said, everybody keeps each other honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to see it get like I saw down in Sioux Falls with the political signs. So, but and I don't think any of us are anti-business here. So, but we're just trying to be responsible for the neighbor also. So, I just want to know if it was enforceable or not.
The temporary sign, while it's a good idea, for code enforcement, we're going to need to know when the permit was issued, and somebody goes 5 minutes over that time limit, we're going to be out there responding to that, which is okay. I mean, we're going to enforce the ordinances however you see fit, and we'll make it do whatever you guys decide.
Thank you.
And one thing I do know from being in this position is if it is a temporary sign and it goes 5 minutes over, you will get a call from a competing business owner. I mean, it will be that fast. Councilman Beeler.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of things. There are other options for grand openings or a taco stand that we have in place currently. But imagine having somebody with 6 or 8 of these. Does he get a permit for each one of those things?
Well, we would still have that regulation. I think that we would still like that so the reason why we went with 100 feet is because in today's ordinance, the lot width has to be 100 feet for a commercial property. So in theory, everybody would get one. But a lot of properties are smaller than that too. And I think that we would still want to leave that stipulation in there so that they weren't, because you can only get, like, it's for a temporary sign. So it's not that somebody would apply to have 5 on their property at one time. Because typically a temporary sign are like the Wise Mantle rent signs that might light up or have a letter board, whatever. And that is just for one sign per property for the 15-day duration. But then you can, for your grand opening, I have that pulled up where you, all of these, so searchlights, streamers, twirling signs, sandwich board signs, or sidewalk or curb signs and balloons exceeding 24 inches in diameter shall not be used except when permitted for the opening of a new business not to exceed 15 days. So after the 15 days, no more celebrating.
I can see how this could be really a nightmare if we had to police this plus the other part of having to apply for a sign permit, having to come down, do that, and then go back and do it again.
Officer Bob Zine, you want to add something?
I do. I think this, just from listening to everything and this being a second reading, I'm just wondering if the council would be interested in this item being on a work session. I think now too, having Chief Toomey up here, just to maybe clean it up and make sure everybody's on the same page. Because no matter what, I think if it has a significant change, it's going to have to come back for a second reading again. So just a thought.
Just a second. I think interim city manager Bob Zine, that's good intentions, but I would like to say, I would like to commend Councilman Danforth and Bueller and everyone else who was on that sign committee years ago. They put in a lot of hours, and I will say, in the times that I have been dragged into sign wars, and I'm talking feather flags, I'm talking illuminated billboards. I don't think that there is a single sign category in this town that hasn't been brought up for a dispute in the past few years. And I will say that the sign ordinance was written well, and opening it up allows us to be really brought into a black hole. I believe Councilman Danforth and Bueller can say, I looked it up. They spent months and months working on this. I would hate to replicate that work to come up with very minor changes. I think if we're already here, if there's a minor change that someone would like to make, then let's make it. But other than that, otherwise, seems like the vast majority of this, other than feather flags, is receiving no disputes. So, Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd make a motion to approve the ordinance with the caveat that we would scratch any reference to allowing feather flags, feather signs.
I would second that.
I'm sorry, I did not hear that, Councilman. What would you like to do?
I'd like to make a motion.
Yep.
To approve the ordinance with the caveat that we would scratch removal of feather signs.
So remove,
So
you would remove the feather flags. So
remove the idea of allowing feather flags.
So in 21-80-14, you would remove item 9, and in 21-80-15, you would keep item 6.
Yep.
That would essentially keep it as it was. Okay, so that was a motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Tupper.
And we'd add it back to this graphic illustration too.
Okay.
Just want to be clear, it's not allowing. It's,
It would basically,
the motion is to deny allowing.
it would disallow feather flags. Okay. The motion has been made and seconded. We are now on discussion of just that motion, which I would like to state we've basically been discussing for over a half an hour already, so.
About enough.
Councilman Jurens?
Real easy then. In the last 7 years, are you getting a lot of calls? Are we still receiving enforcement calls on feather flags?
Yes.
Yeah.
Councilman Shetty?
So, earlier today, we were at the CL district meeting, and there's 10 months or so of meetings that the staff, the team, the committee has been putting together to dial in and make sure we try and get the right plan for the commercial lake. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I would assume back in 2017 or whenever it was, you guys must have put you said quite a few months.
In my 20s.
Yeah, right. And so if there was public input and there was a lot of months involved or time involved to try to dissect this and work this out, we're not too far removed from that in 2025. So I would consider just trusting the direction we came up with in 2017 for now, versus, because that had a lot of time put into it. Not that there's time put into it currently, just with staff, but there is value in what you guys had researched and worked with the public on to get to that decision. So should we really undo that? So just bringing that up as a point to consider as we vote on this.
Any further comments on just the amendment? Councilman Danforth?
Ask a question if I can. Thank you, Mayor. We have, and Mr. Jurgens, I agree with you in regards to supporting the business individuals. I know how hard it is to try to make things work and anything we can do to accommodate that. But there are other, what's the word that you used? Not unrestricted, what'd you call them?
Exempt.
Exempt sign methods, types that can be used other than feather signs, right?
Yep.
This Golden Arch thing, I'm not sure where that's at. But the Golden Arch doesn't have to use a feather sign. It could be something else that is allowable, correct? So it's not like we're taking away every aspect for them, those businesses, to use in promoting something, correct?
Right. Yeah. So like directional or incidental, like the enter exit with the arches, you know, or anywhere, all of that is also exempt.
Yeah. So that said, I go back to the many hours spent on this before is I think that was part of our justification is all the problems and complaints that we had with these. At that time, they literally were unrestricted, unmanaged. And because we had other methods for them to use in those instances, I believe that was one of our justifications to say, look, let's clean up this one, and because they got the other ones there. It's not taking away their ability for short-term or incidental promotions of their business or products. And I think that was part of the reason why we did that. So with that, I'm going to support the amended version of this.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment on just the amendment?
Mayor, can I make a point of clarification too? So we've been calling the temporary signs as needing the permit. Those are actually portable signs. Just point of clarity, not related to any of this. I just wanted to make that clear so people weren't confused. Temporary signs are like the real estate signs or the political signs, the 6 square feet. So then they do not need a permit. But portable signs, that is the correct terminology.
Okay. I would like to comment just to explain, I think I'm going to vote against the amendment, and I think it's a good amendment. I know that there are a lot of complaints about, let's say, there was a lot of work put in about 2 years ago about these huge digital billboards because one installer was complaining about another installer. And so we literally had Terry Ingles out there like 5 different times during the day and night to go see if the lumens were too bright or not bright enough. And then I remember City Manager Mack and I even actually drove out there with the device and were judging it so that we could try to understand it. Fact of the matter is it's an imperfect, a lot of ordinances are imperfect. We can go back to the previous item on the agenda tonight. It's basically on a complaint basis, if whether or not it's enforced. I guess I know instances where feather flags have been used and the business owners like it. I think if it's temporary and they get rid of them, I guess I'd be willing to at least give it a shot, but I'm not going to be crying if the amendment passes either, because I think that's not a horrible idea. So that was just explaining my vote. So the amendment, this is all we're voting on, is the amendment, which is basically disallowing feather flags. Everyone got it? Okay. All those, if you want to get rid of feather flags, you're going to vote yes. If you want to keep feather flags or keep the option of feather flags, you're going to vote no. Got that? Yes if you want them gone, no if you want the possibility of them. Officer Ababzine, please call the roll.
Okay. Tupper?
Yes.
Bueller? Danforth?
Yes.
Moline?
No.
Jurgens?
No.
Peters?
Nay.
Motion carries though.
Oh, Shuddy.
Oh, sorry. Ooh, sorry.
33 right now.
Got a 3-3. I'm sorry. I just added even more pressure on you. We can distract the people if Councilman Jerns wants to do
I'm going to vote aye.
motion does carry.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now we are on discussion of item 11B as amended. Okay? Item 11B as amended. Any further discussion? All right. We'll go to a vote. If you're in favor of passing these amendments, you're going to say aye. If you're against, say nay. Interim City Manager Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Tupper,
Aye.
Beeler, Danforth,
Aye.
Helene,
Aye.
Jurens,
Aye.
Peters, Shetty.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We're on to item 11B, a second reading of ordinance for zoning text amendments to chapters such as home occupation, specific uses of office buildings, bed and breakfast, campgrounds, wireless telecommunications towers, communal living, and swimming pools of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown. Manager Hatton.
Thank you, Mayor. So these are primarily all clerical, other than you'll see, obviously, like here as I have it pulled up, you can see just like having consistent language of what the titles are. And then the one that you see a lot of redlining with is the swimming pool section here, chapter. And that's just because this was previously in Title 11, which is the health and safety chapter. And there were a lot of provisions that were actually regulated or should be regulated at time of building permit issuance or site plan review. So that's the idea of moving some of those. Now, this same language still exists in Title 11, but it's really just not having to cross-reference and then taking the things that are more related to Title 11, leaving that there, striking them in Title 21, and then just having that language with the zoning ordinance. And through our discussions previously about campgrounds, so that's actually included in this ordinance. So if those are, there's nothing that's changing here as far as the language, but it's something that if the desire is there, that as far as looking at amendments to the campgrounds or any of these for that matter, that's something that could be brought up and done in the future. There's nothing being amended to it though, currently.
Thank you. I'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Can I get a motion to approve the amendments? Motion made by Councilman Beeler, seconded by Councilman Peters. Let's open it up for conversation, council. Councilman Danforth.
Yeah. Brandy, has anything been changed at all as it relates to the requirements for pools? You know, the two things that I've historically gotten calls on is there's like a fencing requirement or something like that, right? Or a gate. That's always been one in question. But one of the ones that really I've gotten several times over the last few years is the above ground pools. You know, Bob and Betty have a above ground pool and I'm their neighbor and I'm slightly downhill and their pool bursts. I mean, that literally is the issue that I've had people call me on is what happens if that bursts? All that water's coming down to me. Is that just simply a liability issue between them or is there?
Yeah, because we don't regulate for the pools that are up seasonally. So that's where if it's a permanent pool above ground and it's in place for more than 180 days, I believe, let me check on that, I could just have 180 in my head, then it has to have certain setbacks. But yeah, otherwise, if they're a seasonal pool that they put up for the summer and then take down, yeah, there's not.
Just a liability issue then, right?
Mm-hmm. And then the gate and everything and the fence is if it's in ground, so that there's the safety precautions there, so that somebody's child or pet isn't walking into it. where with it being above ground, then it's not as, like,
Well, you aren't gonna fall in it
Yeah.
unless but most of those have steps and then a platform of some sort, whether
Yeah.
it's all the way around or one side. Are there any controls with those that prohibits kids from going up the steps to that, or is that just an open issue?
hopefully just like a parental guidance.
Okay. All right, no, those are, like I said, those are questions that I know have been asked a number of times, so, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? All right, as that was just a clarification question, I feel confident that we can just go to a voice vote. All those in favor of passing these amendments, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. On to 11D, another second reading of ordinance amendments to chapters dealing with things such as required yards and open space, fences, walls, and hedges, off-street parking and loading requirements, outside storage and display requirements for specific uses, and landscape and lighting standards of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown. Manager Hinton.
Thank you, Mayor. So these are all, for the most part, again, very clerical. The main one that you'll see a lot of changes that were made to were the fences, walls, and hedges chapter. And that is just because what we previously had was minuscule and very open-ended. So this adds a lot more guidance and requirements for people that are installing such screening devices. Other than that, there's just striking some things of the landscape and lighting ordinances that are not substantial. It's just, again, pretty clerical and in means of trying to create just more guidance.
Thank you. I will open a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? Close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Can I get a motion to approve the amendments? Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Peters. Let's open it up for conversation, council. All right, hearing none.
I will.
Councilman Jerns.
I think I'd have fallen asleep 10 times during just this little portion. Brandy's got a lot of work in her department, has a lot of work into this. Oh, my word. My ADD would have kicked in 100 times. I mean, this is crazy work. So thank you, Brandy, for being patient and getting out the changes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's been a long time in the works, so I'm glad to get it in front of you guys and have action on it so that we can put it behind us for a bit and add the track changes for as things come up in the future. Because that's the thing about ordinances, is that they can be amended and they need it, so.
I'll even go one step further and say thank you, Manager Hinton, and everyone else who has worked on it, simply because I know from experience that when the law is written clearly, you can mitigate disputes between neighbors and diffuse them faster. I believe that Chief Toomey back there would also agree. It is important how the ordinances are written and making sure that they're up to the times. So thank you for doing that. Any further comments, Councilman Beeler?
Well, since we're all on the thank train, I just want to say thanks as well, because I know this is initiative you've taken to get this done. You haven't had necessarily a lot of direction that you need to do this. This is something you've taken upon yourself to make better, to make it. And I know you'll continue to do that, continuous improvement, and it's appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else, council? All right, since it was just a big thanks, I feel comfortable doing a voice vote. All those in favor of approving Brandy's work, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. On to item 11E, a second reading of an ordinance text amendment to Chapter 2101, Purpose and others on administration and enforcement, general provisions, and Chapter 2103, general provisions of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown. Manager Hannon.
Thank you, Mayor. So once again, providing the clarity to some of these ordinances, not anything of substance, changing just language there between planning and plan commission. One thing that's unique, I guess, is that I'll just point out because it could be substantive, I guess, which I think I pointed out in the first reading too, with the allowance that somebody could live in a RV or camper on their lot if they have a building permit where their house is actively being built. That was not, well, actually what wasn't clear is that you couldn't have a secondary, it's always been regulated this way, but just to make it very clear within ordinance, is that you cannot have a accessory structure. So like you can't have a garage on a lot without a primary structure if it's zoned residentially. And then also just adding on to that, because it's come up in the past of when somebody is building their house and say that they demolish it and then they're in the process of rebuilding it, of living in the camper during that time. So that's something that we wanted to bring forward, if that was allowable in council's opinion, to at least put it out there for action. So.
Thank you, Manager Hinton. Do we have a motion? Oh, excuse me, open the public hearing. Ahead of myself, so. Now I'll ask for council action.
Can I get a motion to approve the amendments? Motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Shetty. Let's open it up for conversation. Councilman Shetty.
Okay, so a quick point of clarification on the camper portion of it. So is that in this ordinance about where it can be parked as far as in the driveway or beside the garage? Is that in this ordinance or in a different ordinance?
Well, there wouldn't necessarily be a structure on the property yet. And so if they say that they demolish the house and then they still have their sewer connection, where they most likely would be parking near that so that they'd connect their camper. But so no, there's not. I would say though, if there would be issue with it, you could definitely still regulate it to say that it needs to be within the setbacks, the required setbacks for a primary structure, because the vehicle itself will be temporary. And then if they are going to store the camper or RV on the premise, that it needs to be on the side, or, it has to still follow the off-street parking requirements.
So there still would be, that would guide that process of where it would be parked to be following the off-street parking guidelines. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Brandy, I may have missed it, but do we have a time restriction on that? How long can they have a temporary residence like that?
So the building permit is good for a year, and typically residential properties are able to meet that 1 year. And then if they need an extension, then they have to pay again half the building permit fee, and they can be extended up to 3 years. But residential projects, typically they're closing them out because they also most likely have to have the certificate of occupancy to be able to submit that to their bank and take the construction loan or mortgage to get all of their financial things wrapped up. So we actually see for like a new single family home that they are within a year.
Any further comments, council? All right, hearing none, the motion is to approve the amendments. All those in favor will say aye, opposed nay. Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay, Tupper.
Aye.
Bueller. Danforth.
Aye.
Helene.
Aye.
Jurens.
Aye.
Peters. Shetty?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We're on to item 12A, an approval of a resolution authorizing signatures of warrants and attestation for the city of Watertown. Attorney Carrico.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, as you know, previously you passed a similar resolution, given that the appointment of the interim city manager was our finance officer. With the departure of Assistant City Manager Von I, we now need a secondary signature, and in consultation with the city manager, we have proposed Darcy Nichols, our Human Resources Director, given that she's on site already and can more easily do the dual signature requirements. So Jennifer Collins will continue to be the attestation designee as our records and licensing manager. And if I have any other questions, we can answer them.
Thank you. Chair will entertain motion to approve the resolution. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Any conversation on this, council? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the resolution, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item 12B is an approval of the workers' compensation insurance policy renewal for 2025 and authorization for the chief financial officer to issue a special check for payment of the premium. Director Nichols.
Hello, good evening, council. I'm back to ask for approval of the work comp insurance premium for 2025. This is something that we do in combination with municipal utilities. So we do the payroll estimation combined. They apply kind of a base rate for work comp, and we get a premium number. And then the pool starts issuing discounts and deductions from there. So we start at a number like $745,000, and we get down to the $410,506. Of that, our portion is $323,811, and utilities contributes $86,695 of that. We've vetted that with them. They approve of all of our premium distributions, and they have confirmed that that's their number, so we're good to go for 25. I can answer any questions you may have.
Councilman Peters. Oh, actually, sorry. Need a motion to approve the policy renewal. Motion made by Councilman Jurens. Who seconded over here? Councilman Bueller. Okay, Councilman Peters.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Nichols, I have 4 questions for you, and we were contacted earlier in the week by an individual, a constituent that I won't name their name here, but I just thought for the sake of not having 37 emails fly around, we could just get them on public record here. So I got 4 questions. I'll start with the first one. Let me back up a bit. So the concern comes from the substantial increase in premiums for the renewal, and the why we don't take them out for competitive bidding in this instance. So with that in mind, I'll just go through these questions. The first one is, how much of the $26 million of the South Dakota Municipal League Workers' Compensation Fund belongs to the city of Watertown?
Well, that's a tough one for me to answer. I really can't speak to their market positioning and what they hold back in reserves to pay claims and what their policies are. I can say that if something did occur with the pool, and they would, no longer be in business after everything is said and done, our portion of that 26 million would come back to the city as a member. We have been with the pool since 1987. I believe we were the 4th entity to join. So we received substantial return on equity with our relationship with them. And in terms of what their marketing position is with, like I said, what they hold back in reserves, I guess that would be a question I would have to ask of Brad, their director.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, mind if I keep going? I think I have it in here. I'm trying to find it for you, Darcy. I think that it talks about how much is in surplus right now, but I believe it's substantial, which the next question here is why are premiums increasing despite such a large surplus? Which portion of this belongs to the city of Watertown?
I think the premiums increased this year. I had a conversation with Brad, and it is specifically due to our loss runs and our large claim experience that we've had. So right now, the experience period we're looking at is January 1st of 21 through January 1st of 23. And they haven't raised any of their rates or premiums with the pool. The premium increases is just really addressing our losses and our large claims. So.
This next question is probably more rhetorical for you and a question for the council, but it's should the city of Watertown continue participating in an unregulated insurance pool? Do you know if they're regulated or not?
Well, I can tell you that South Dakota state statutes allow for a risk pool in the state. There's a health risk pool, there's the work comp risk pool, and they are audited by legislative audit, so their financial statements are submitted to legislative audit and looked at that way. I guess you consider that a form of regulation, but.
Sure, okay. And then I don't expect you to know the answer to this, but do you know if the South Dakota Municipal League has been involved in or has it recently settled any bad faith lawsuits? Are you aware of that?
I think that's a question to ask them. I can't speak to that specifically.
Well, that's what I have. Thanks for
Yeah.
bearing with me there.
Okay.
But I just figured we'd go through this
Thank
here
you.
instead of, all the emails back and forth. And I know my fellow council men had the same question as well. So
Sure.
do you want to expand on that anymore? I know we were all contacted. Go ahead, Mr. Insurance Agent down there.
That's who I was going to next. Councilman Jurens.
So really, there's not a lot of options, There is options, but if you go to the state pool, there's a surcharge. So anyone with this experience mod that I don't know what is, but that experience mod was developed based on our losses right here in Watertown, South Dakota. And every employer does have one of those experience mods, and it's all based on 3 years of experience excluding this prior year. And so this is the best option. Unless you want to go to the surcharge. But there's not a lot of people out there that say, hey, we'll take you on. You've just had 3 horrible years of experience. Boy, we'd like to try some of that. So that was one thing is, those were just the 2 points that I thought of while you were going through the questions, and Darcy did a good job of answering.
Yeah, those experience claims, those high dollar claims will eventually drop off. So hopefully that will get better as we move into the future.
All right.
One more thing,
Councilman?
Mayor. Really what we can do and what employers do is they continue to work with safety and keeping these claims I know they can't all be eliminated, but something's going on. Something's going on, and there can be a lot of work being done by department heads. It's not easy work, but there's some simple things. And good companies, I don't know what they're using for a company. Sounds like it's a self-funded pool, but good companies will send a loss control rep out and go, oh my word. Well, here's some simple things. Won't even cost you any money that you can be doing to eliminate some of these claims that you're having. They'll look at that loss history. They'll look at the loss history over the last 10 years, but they'll specifically look at these claims that have been filed and in effect changed the premium.
Thank you. Any further comments, council? I would just also like to say, I know from just experience that a lot of our department and division heads are taking the steps to try to increase safety. I will cite like landfill director Davis, who apparently we never had any regulation on having like steel-toed shoes, even though, I mean, that's an example where never had anything like that, and now every employee has those. So it's a very simple thing that you can do that can reap rewards in your insurance. So I applaud everyone in the city who's paying attention to that. Any further comments or questions, council? All right. The motion is to approve the workers' comp insurance policy for 25. All those in favor will say aye, opposed nay. Officer Bob Zine.
Okay, Tupper.
All right.
Bueller. Danforth.
Aye.
Helene.
Aye.
Jurens.
Aye.
Peters. Shetty.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. On to item 12C, authorization for the reclassification of the police sergeant position from a grade 165 to a grade 170. Interim City Manager Bob Zine.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yes, before the council is an adjustment to the grade for the sergeant positions with the city of Watertown. This request did come forward during union negotiations, but we kind of ran out of time to have the full conversation and gather all the information before we tried to get that agreement approved. So then we kind of discussed, and the next step we thought was to bring it forward to the council as its own separate item. So I know Chief Toomey and HR Director Nichols are here and available to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Chief Toomey.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. She summed it up well. I just want to comment, as Chief of Police, there's many worries that keep me up at night, as you can imagine. We're responsible for the complete safety of the city. But I don't stay up at night because I know that we have the most professional, most ethical, most empathetic leaders out there every night and on the weekends taking care of business, and that's the 7 sergeants at our police department. They are the most incredible, most influential employees that we have at the police department. So I'm just really here to brag about how well they are, and I hope you support this. It's a very small investment into the future of our department. You know, it's a competitive market. It's a hiring rampage right now. Everybody's trying to get their staff full. So I would hate to lose somebody. I don't think anybody's going to leave regardless, but really, they're just really great people. And I know they're in their room, so maybe they'll buy me a donut tomorrow.
Thank you, Chief. Director Nichols, did you have anything to add?
No, just that we personally called all 17 entities that we did a comparison for starting wages on this, and we felt like we needed to be more competitive, and that's what took the time bringing it forward. We didn't have a chance to do all of the background vetting prior to the contract coming forward, so we did spend some time and really compare with all the other agencies in the state and looked at where we were sitting, and then, looked at where we want to be. So we're not number one, but we feel like we're competitive with the size of our department and the quality of our staff.
Thank you, Chief.
One more comment is that we have regraded pretty much every other position in the police department. The sergeants just kind of got overlooked. So this is just making them up. We regraded the patrol officers, the corporal and detectives, the dispatchers. So this is just keeping them right where they need to be, in order to avoid compression and those types of things.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the reclassification.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman, was it Danforth?
Yep.
Seconded by Councilman Peters. Let's go to Councilman Danforth.
One question, the amount, the financial impact on the budget, is that per person or per?
No, that's in
aggregate?
total.
That's in total. So the 12,000 for all 7.
Okay,
Yep.
in aggregate, thank you.
And Tim's going to absorb that in his.
We probably can absorb it in our current budget. So.
Any further questions or comments? Councilman Shetty.
Just a comment. I was fortunate to be at the awards banquet here a couple weeks ago and be able to see just to be part of the mix, part of the team for an evening. And so I appreciate what the sergeants have been doing and the leadership that they're portraying, but then also throughout the police department. So I appreciate that. Just wanted to, just share my thanks for what you guys are doing.
Councilman Tupper.
I was also at that awards banquet. Some of the stories that were told at the awards banquet, and I mean the serious ones, there was a few jokes too, but especially the video at the end, but amused everybody a little bit. But the life-saving awards, it was just totally amazing. All the awards that went out. The life-saving awards are really, really touching. You had one officer got 2, but these guys, I got a call earlier just before the council meeting, and it was Officer Kinnaman, part of his, I got that name right, didn't I? One of the new officers.
What was the name?
Kinnaman?
No.
No, Kinnaman.
Oh, Kanunen, Sergeant Kanunen.
No.
Kendon Kep?
Well, what? Maybe I misunderstood his name. Anyhow, he's a new officer.
DeVille, probably.
No, it wasn't DeVille. I would have remembered that name, but
That's it, yeah.
We got 20.
yeah, whichever.
Let's
So
go through them all.
I just misunderstood his name then, but part of his job was to reach out to a councilman and reach out to businesses, which I really appreciate that. I mean, he chose me, I guess, but I don't know, maybe they got to reach out to all of us, but you know, the dedication that you guys have did in the last couple, three, you know, this is stuff I told him. The community involvement and the community enrichment and the professionalism that's held by the Watertown Police Department is second to none. I welcomed him to what I believe is one of the best departments in the state, if not the country. So my hat's off to you guys. It was a great awards banquet, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for coming.
And I'd also like to just say, on behalf of the entire council and the community, that I know, all kidding aside, either what we do with Councilman Tupper here or what you guys do internally, there's a lot of jokes that probably need to happen to lighten the mood wherever you work. But also, it is humbling when you are made aware of how some of our city employees are out saving lives, because that's not just one person's life you're saving. You're saving entire quality of life for their family, for their friends, probably where they work. The ripples continue throughout the entire community and impact hundreds and hundreds of people. So it's not just one person whenever you do that. So it's just would like to note that. Any other comments, council? That and just dealing with stupid, naughty people is also something that needs to be done. So, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. All right. Can I get, okay, so the motion is to authorize the reclassification. And all those in favor of doing so will say aye. Opposed, nay. Officer Bob Zine.
Okay. We have Tupper,
Aye.
Bueller, Danforth,
Aye.
Helene,
Aye.
Jurens,
Aye.
Peters, Shetty.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item 12D is an approval of development agreement with Mother of God Monastery for the transition of Little Blessings Daycare. Attorney Carrico.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, if you recall, back in, let's see here, back in September, you guys approved a pledge, donation, loan, whatever, over to Mother of God Monastery for the transition of the daycare of Little Blessings over to Harmony Hill. And we do not actually have the actual agreement at that time for you guys to adopt. We have attached it to the agenda. The highlights are $350,000 payable over 5 years, $70,000 in annual installments. There are some caveats of goals to be met. Obviously, when you recall Sister Barb making her presentation, there probably will be issues with trying to staff at the appropriate levels and, just trying to find workers and whatnot to accommodate all the children. The initial opening would be in June of this year, hopefully to accommodate at least 75 children. We also put in some caveats about that the daycare itself be affordable within the community, and that it grow over that 5-year period up to, I believe, 150 to 250 children. And then there's a general clause that they have to abide by state and local laws with regard to the development of the renovations and whatnot, that they comply. Any other questions? I can certainly try to answer them.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agreement? Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Let's open it up for comments and questions, council. Councilman Peters?
Yeah, I just make a quick comment here on the development agreement. I think the key here, on page 2, it's the forgiveness of loan. Oh wait, is that the one? I just saw it. essentially it talks about how the loan isn't totally forgiven up front. They have parameters that they need to meet and they need to get operational. And if they're not, we would have the ability to get our money back. So I just want to make that point here. I think that's a pretty key piece in this development agreement, just to lean into how it's not just a, here's the money, good luck, call us when it's up. There's some checks and balances in place here. So that's the only comment I'd have.
Thank you. Any further comment? All right, as that was just a clarification question, I feel okay just going to a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the agreement, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We are now on to item 12E, but I'm going to ask our city attorney, Carrico, to take item E, F, and G, as they are all dealing with roughly the same topic. And Attorney Carrico, you can lead off for information.
Thank you, Thank you, Mayor and Council. You'll find 3 items on the agenda. You will recognize them as they were previously made on November 25th of 2024. We are looking to finalize all aspects as to these motions that were previously made. The motions relate to personnel issues which were appropriately discussed in executive session and related to items directly under the council's purview, being the city manager and the appointment of an interim city manager. And so I would recommend that you make the following motions and approvals again so that all aspects of these items will be finalized.
Thank you very much. And just to basically finalize them, I'm going to be asking council to follow what we have already released in the minutes that we promptly and legally posted to the public as to all actions that were made. All of those actions were made public immediately or as soon as we could after the meeting and posted according to the law. So on item 12E, which is to accept the city manager's resignation effective November 25th of 2024, I will ask Councilman Jurens to make the motion. Is that okay, Councilman? And I will ask Councilman Peters to second that motion. Any further discussion on this item? The motion is to accept the resignation effective on that date. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item 12F, is to authorize the city attorney Carrico to carry out personnel-related matters as discussed in executive session. Attorney Carrico, does anything need to be more said about that for clarification?
No, thank you though for asking, Mayor.
Okay. I will ask Councilman Tupper to do the motion.
So moved.
And I will ask Councilman Peters to second that motion. Any further discussion on this item, council? Hearing none, the motion is to authorize the Attorney Carrico to carry out the matter. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We're on to item 12G, which is to appoint CFO Bob Zine as the interim city manager effective on that date. I will ask Councilman Peters to make that motion, and I will ask Councilman Schutte to second that motion. Any further discussion on this? I'm going to ask for a voice vote on this. So Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Tupper?
Aye.
Bueller? Danforth?
Aye.
Helene?
Aye.
Jurens?
Aye.
Peters? Shetty?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We are now on to item 13, City Council member announcements and introduction of topics for future discussion. I am going to go to Councilman Tupper, who has some good news related to the reputation Watertown is getting across the state and the region.
So on last Thursday, I traveled to Pierre with Sister Barb Younger and Sarah Faut, the Director of Cudahy County Cares. We were invited to Pierre. The mayor was out of town, so he asked me to sit in for him. We were invited to Pierre to tell you it was actually State Kid Day. I think it was all week, but that day they were talking about daycares, and we all understand that Watertown's not the only community that has a daycare problem. But we just got done with doing a study of being short 600 daycare spots when the news came out that Little Blessings was closing. So basically what our conversation was out in Pierre, because everybody else has recognized in the state what a good job Watertown did, was kind of explain what we did. And actually what we did is we got the key players to the table. You know, if you guys all remember right, the first thing we did was had a meeting with half a dozen key players right upstairs in the conference room. And the next thing you know, we had a public meeting with, it's a long time ago, but I'm going to guess there was 100, 150 parents there at LATC, along with some of the key players in the community again. Part of the conversation was how the city and the county stepped up to the plate because they had their $500,000 South Dakota Works grant that was relying on some matching funds, and that's the money that we just talked about in that last motion that we made. That was a short period of time. They had a really small window, so we had to react. I guess kind of what I call it out when I was talking about it out there is, we went from knowing we're in bad trouble to a panic state because we had to react on that matching dollars for the monastery to be able to put that together. They were just amazed at how we put people together, and I'll glad to report, and I didn't even realize that she'd raised that much, but Sister Barb and her group has raised $1.3 million in private donations for the My Little Village. I had to think about it the other day when I was talking to Steve, but I thought about it on the way back from Pierre. God, what a proper name for the place, because when we were faced with the largest daycare and one of the oldest daycares in town's closing, that's what it took. We had to approach it like a village. I mean, and that's what we did. We got the villagers to the table, and it was just amazing. We had probably, it was during the lunch hour, so we probably had 50 or 60 lawmakers that joined us. Senator Bill Howard was there. House Representative Matt Roby was there. There was a lot of people that I recognized from smaller communities around, and there was a lot of questions afterwards. We had about a 20-minute presentation. Then we had some question and answer. Then we stuck around for about another 25, 30 minutes just to visit with people. It was just an amazing time. So it was nice to go to Pierre for a reason of getting recognized instead of fighting against the bill or something like that. But Watertown was invited to kind of show off what we did, and it took the whole village to get it done. So my hat's off to the whole community for stepping up to the plate. Doesn't mean the work's done. We still got a lot of work to do because we're still shy a lot of positions. But I know there is a committee that's working hard on that, and I truly appreciate everything they're doing. I know Ms. Hanton's on part of that, so we'll get there. Just going to take some time, but like I say, this one we had to push the panic button, but we got the right people at the table. When you rely on your community and get the right people to the table to talk, you can get a lot of things done in a short period of time. So that's what makes Watertown so great to live in. So thank you very much.
Attorney Carrico, you have some more information probably regarding Mr. Rademski's comments in open forum.
I do. Thank you, Mayor. I should have taken you up on your advice at the very beginning to just wait it out and figure it out and tell you guys all at the end. I had previously responded to Jason Rademski when he initially reached out and had pointed him to Article 9 of the Charter. Article 9 lays out how you can amend the Charter. What I want to clarify, because I was kind of mixing things up, is sometimes the Charter can be amended by ordinance proposed by the council, but the council cannot change items related to the city manager. So that was the part of clarification that I wanted to make. The other corollary to that is any attempts to petitions and whatnot would still need to follow South Dakota Statute Title 9-11, and that pretty much lays it out, as well as Article 9 on the steps that need to be taken. The reference to 2027 is specifically to the Home Rule Charter Revision Committee. that's when they would reconvene to see if any additional changes should be made. But from what I've read with the charter and state statute, there's nothing saying that you can't change the charter before 2027. The 2027 reference has to do with the Charter Revision Committee. So there you have it.
Thank you. Any further council items for announcements or discussion? City manager report? We do have a reason to go into executive session for contractual reasons. Chair will entertain, and we will not be taking any action when we are done. Can I get a motion to go into executive session? Motion made by Councilman Danforth, second by Councilman Bueller. All those in favor of going into executive session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Good night and God bless you, Watertown.